Our next panel is going to focus on post-processing, and we're delighted to have these two gentlemen joining us in person. Tuan TranPham is going to moderate. Tuan is the Chief Revenue Officer at Azul 3D. Take it away. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. As you can see, I'm very excited.
Yes, great.
We're here to talk about post-processing, and I'm very delighted to have this panel. Let's start with a brief introduction each for 60 seconds. How about Felix, you go first?
Yeah, of course. So, hello everyone. I'm Felix, CEO and co-founder of Dyemansion, and we are focusing on industrial post-processing solutions for powder bed plastics, so quite niche. But therefore, we cover all the needs for our customers in the segment, from cleaning to surfacing to coloring, and we call it our print-to-product workflow, so in 3 steps from raw part to high-value products. And yeah, some facts to Dyemansion. So we are 90 people. Our headquarters is in Munich, Germany. We have a subsidiary in Austin, Texas, and we have more than 700 machines in field in 40 different countries. Very happy to be here today.
Awesome. Rich?
Yeah, thanks, Tuan. So this is Rich Caplow. I'm Vice President of Products at Post Process. And we deliver a comprehensive suite of solutions for post-printing that includes surface finish, resin removal, support removal, and we do it across a variety of different materials, polymer and metal. And we do it based on what we describe as a full stack solution that includes the hardware, the software that drives the automation and intelligence, as well as proprietary chemistry and detergent.
Excellent. Joseph?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Crabtree, founder and CEO of AMT. My background, just for context, is in material sciences and started AMT in 2017, having spent a decade in traditional manufacturing. So what does AMT do? Well, we've developed a full technology stack, hardware stack for post-processing. In essence, we finish 3D printed parts and transform them from as 3D printed part into something that looks, feels, and performs like a traditionally manufactured part. In the last half decade, we've now grown the company into be the world leaders in chemical vapor smoothing and full end-to-end automation of the post-processing workflow. Delighted to be here today in person and looking forward to the debate.
Awesome. So my name is Tuan TranPham. I love 3D printing. I've been doing this for 19 years now, and it's getting better every year. So let me set the stage, and then we spend 20 minutes on Q&A. And then we want to leave room to 1 question from the audience and 1 potentially from online. But let me just set the stage. We have never had a better year than last year. Despite everything that has happened, we had a spectacular year. The industry got more play money. About $2 billion, by my calculation, were infused into the industry. There are 3 times more startups than ever before. On average, according to AM Ventures, there's usually about 200-300 a year that they can tally up. But last year was 750. So people love 3D printing. When they rotate and move jobs, there are a lot of new innovation to come. So this is exciting times. I'm a little bit guilty. I have a confession. So while I've worked for 8 manufacturers of 3D printers, I realized that we, in those roles, were only focusing about we make the printer and you print it and you all done. The truth is, no part, regardless of material, is net shape and ready to go. There's always a need for post-processing. So the objective of this panel is to actually educate you why it's important, and without it, we will not get to mass production. So that is a little bit of setting the stage. So what I want to highlight first is that connecting the dots between the printing and the post-processing, especially for indirect print engine technologies. Because if you don't control and have knowledge of the post-processing flow, you will have so many different material properties that you will never earn the right to qualify yourself going to production. While we as an industry have grown to 12 billion a year now in growth, but for us to go to 120 billion in revenue per year, to graduate from prototyping all the way to mass production, we need to step up. So this panel is trying to highlight where are we today, where are we going, and what should we expect of trends. So the first question is, we are seeing that the post-processing was not even on the radar a few years ago if you go to trade show. I'm delighted to see a recent show at Rapid or Formnext. There are many post-processing suppliers, but yet, in the big picture, it is still very small and fragmented. So should we expect a collaboration, Joseph?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So you're right, there's only one or two key players in the industry. And really up until now, everyone's been focused on the printer and the materials, bigger, better, faster. As you rightly mentioned, it's only recently that people have started focusing on post-processing. But we realize we can't do it on our own, and collaboration is absolutely required. That's collaboration with the materials companies, collaboration with the printer companies, and potentially consolidation in the future. And a really interesting point is, everyone focuses on design for additive manufacturing, and I know we discussed this a bit earlier, but you've actually got to design for the whole process. You've got to consider the materials, what properties you're going to get out after printing and after post-processing, and ultimately how you then combine all of those things together. And if you're not designing for the whole process, then you're not going to get a part that's suitable for end use afterwards. So absolutely, collaboration is key to being successful in a manufacturing environment.
Thank you for that. So are we really merging printing and post-processing together? Are people understanding that we need to think of both the whole workflow?
I think that's another great question. And, from our perspective, although we do sell individual modules of equipment which address specific needs, we really think of this as a manufacturing process. My background's in manufacturing, and we believe that you've got to consider the printer, as I said, the materials and the post-processing as one system. We're now developing full end-to-end automated solutions that are being implemented and integrated this year to churn out millions of parts. So this is no longer just a hypothetical scenario. This is a reality that's happening. And you're absolutely right. You've got to be combining the printer with the post-processing and considering not only the hardware, but the software, how you integrate it to get that ultimate end-use part that you require out of the system.
Awesome. If we talk about what's going on now, what are the latest trends or technologies in post-processing? Felix, do you want to take that one?
So I think in general, of course, we are talking since 5 years now about automation in post-processing, and I think that's the core what we are doing as Dyemansion, but also as the other ones here in our panel. So I think that's clear, and there it's not only about, in the beginning it was only, this causes costs, but in the meantime also everyone recognizes that it's not only about bringing down costs, it's also about bringing more value to the parts. I think that's a very good thing. And so in general, besides automation, I also see a lot of stuff going on in terms of certification of the process, and also for us a very important topic is to guarantee that when the parts went through our processes, that we can guarantee that the parts have the right properties. So it's really a lot about bringing also post-processing to a very highly industrial level. That's what we do in our daily work here at Dyemansion.
Thank you. Rich?
Yeah, well, there's so many different ways to think about this notion of unifying printing and post-printing, and arguably it really transcends just the print and post-print, but in fact extends to the entire additive workflow, right? So starting from the very upfront, the way I think of it, the leftmost piece of this picture having to do with creation of the digital twin, and moving from the part design to the build prep, to the print, to the post-print, to the quality assurance, all of that. And the comment earlier about collaboration throughout that digital thread is so critical. And I firmly believe that is instrumental to the success of the industry as we scale it to the full scale of what we can achieve with high-scale production. The fact of the matter is we're talking about integration both at a physical level and a digital level. So in other words, integrating the mechanical processes of material handling and the use of AGVs, for example. We're working with customers all over the world who are putting together production cells that are using high degrees of automation involving robots and so on, but also at the digital level, integrating the automation systems. So we're seeing it happening in both planes. And it's just so instrumental as we think about where we're going as an industry.
Just to pick up on that point, if I may. So I agree, the actual integration of physical hardware modules together is a challenge. One of the challenges that we face is the automation in terms of how do you replicate human movements. You know, it's all very well supplying individual modules. How do you then physically connect them together? We talked about the software. But in terms of those robotics, how do you do vision recognition? How do you do sorting? How do you do racking of parts? And that's challenging. You know, if you look at any other manufacturing environment, whether it be CNC molding, injection molding, it is fully automated, lights out, and we need to get there with additive manufacturing. We believe we're very close. As I said, we're integrating systems in the US and Germany this year to develop or to deliver high volume automotive parts. But that is a real challenge. It's not just about, you know, producing a part that now looks, feels, and performs like a traditionally manufactured part, but it's how you integrate and manage all of those hardware pieces together. It is a challenge.
Agreed. So as the whole industry is moving with the ambition going from prototyping to production, where quality, repeatability, predictability, automation is where they are going on the hardware printing side, post-processing, what do you guys need to add or evolve to accommodate that automation to ensure high quality? So.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So you need to be working with the material providers, the printer suppliers. You need to be getting good quality prints out of the printer. But then aside from that, we discussed this, you need to be designing for, you know, the post-processing so you can actually physically post-process the part. But this idea of quality control and inspection, now, quality control, you know, you're not sort of putting quality into the process. You're not inspecting quality into the process. You've got to have a good, repeatable and reproducible process, which is what we pride ourselves on. You know, it's a manufacturing process. But the quality inspection side of it, the quality assurance side of it is really complex because you've got a non-traditional part, potentially a lattice structure, very, very complex geometries. How do you inspect that? How do you ensure that the inner surfaces are conforming? How do you ensure that it's got the right dimensional tolerances? These are all questions that, yes, even though we can post-process a part and we can automate it, how do you do all of that as well? And when we talk about some of our automotive customers or high-volume consumer customers, they absolutely require every single part to be 100% right all the time, and that is a big challenge still.
So when we hear from 3D printing guys talking about going to the future with machine learning, AI, and vision in situ process monitoring, going to mass production. Felix, what are your thoughts on what is needed to go to mass production?
Yeah, so actually, of course, there are various topics. And of course, also we as post-processing companies need to do our homework to make sure that we can deliver all the promises that the industry and that we make to our customers. But to be honest, I still think when I think about our technologies, and I think it's easier to scale our technologies than the printing technologies. Of course, we have to do our homework, and yeah, there is still a lot of stuff to do. But in my opinion, the biggest limitation today is still the technical capabilities of the printers in terms of throughput and repeatability. And when I come back to our side, of course, there are those different buzzwords, but I'm not a fan of throwing around with buzzwords. For me, it's about doing the right things at the right time. And for some of the things, it's definitely the right time. And of course, the most obvious thing is automation, which is our core focus at Dyemansion at the moment.
Rich?
Yeah, so you know, it's incredibly important that we understand how to close the loop, to take the part outcomes through the print as well as the post-print process, and through QA, QC, be able to ensure that we're delivering the part outcomes that customers require, close the loop to accomplish that and achieve those outcomes. But I would say that I would take it one step further, and I would say that closing the loop involves iterative design improvement. So taking it beyond just the STL file and the build prep, but bringing it back all the way to the part design and understanding how to iteratively improve on the part design such that it's designed not just for optimal printing, but also designed for optimal post-printing. And how do we close that loop? And to achieve that, we're working with a number of different partners to be able to take the output from and the outcomes from our post-print process and connect the dots back in the form of a rule set back to this idea of generative design and understanding how to accommodate the post-print process in that entire workflow.
I think that's a good point, and you've got to consider the design of the part. And AMT actually go one step further. We run a fleet of industrial printers in-house. We print our own parts that then go through the process, and we can then close that iterative loop. Because if you don't print parts yourself, you don't know what you're trying to achieve. So that's a really important step that we've taken in working with some of our bigger partners as well.
So where do we go from here? When you see there's growth in the industry, both from metal to polymer to composite and even ceramic, what's next for post-processing in the next 3 to 5 years? Will we see consolidation? Will we see collaboration? The truth is, most customers probably need more than just one post-processing equipment. They are good for coloring, for cleaning, for compacting, but if I need multiple steps, I have to put together an a la carte menu. That's not going to fly because it's going to be a pain to integrate all that. They want a one-stop shop. So what is the future of post-processing in 3 to 5 years?
I think that analogy to a one-stop shop is really useful. And the same way as when you go and buy your printer, you don't want to have to be selecting multiple pieces of equipment. That's really where we step in, and we can provide that full end-to-end solution. And that's why companies come to us, and we provide all of the solutions for their specific requirements. Those requirements will vary depending if it's a consumer application. Like you said, it might just be unpacking, depowdering, and chemical vapor smoothing. Coloring doesn't seem to be as much of an issue. We don't really see that as a core value proposition going forward. We really see the surface functionalization, the smoothing of parts, the cleaning, the support removal as the key must-haves. But ultimately, the customer wants to be able to get their printer. They want to have a plug-and-play solution, and the post-processing has to be part of that.
Yeah, Tuan, I think it's an interesting point. I think that in some ways it's fairly typical of the evolution of any industry, which is to say that there's an evolutionary process that occurs, and the customers themselves are dealing with heterogeneous technologies, many different vendors, and understanding how to optimize across a lot of what goes on in an environment that's comprised of many different solutions from different places with different protocols and so on, and need help to tie all that together. And I think the point earlier about collaboration is important that way. We support that with open APIs in our software platform, but I think it ultimately will lead to answer your question, towards consolidation. And that would be the next phase of the industry as we think about where it's going next, is to see some consolidation, tying together the different vendors and delivering a more homogeneous solution for the benefit of customers.
I think just on the consolidation point, we also believe that it's important to be agnostic. We want to work with all the printer manufacturers. We don't want to limit ourselves to just powder-based technologies or filament-based technologies. So we try and be as agnostic as possible. We have partnerships with most of the major printer OEMs, and I think that's really important. And to your point earlier is that collaboration is so important for the industry.
Felix?
Yeah, maybe, of course, I agree on the collaboration topic. So it won't work without all the stakeholders in the industry. And when I think about consolidation in our segment, I'm pretty sure it will also happen sooner or later. But I actually have no idea when, and how it will look like. But I think also the good thing is that there is no need that it happens anytime soon. So in my opinion, the market is big enough for at least 3 players in this field. And also, in my opinion, to run a post-processing company that can fulfill requirements on a highly industrial level, you need to come to a $30 million revenue level to be successful in a sustainable way as a company. And yeah, the market is definitely big enough to have more companies than just one in this field on this level. So there is no need for consolidation anytime soon. But when you look at the industry, then you always saw consolidation phases. And I think it will also sooner or later happen in post-processing. And in my opinion, it will start to get interesting when people will realize that the factory floor of the future will be mostly shaped by post-processing machines. Then it will get interesting. And so super excited to be a post-processing company in the moment and also in the next years.
Thank you. I hope you guys are ready, because in my opinion, there's definitely room for more players in post-processing because look at the trend, what's going on, not just in metals. Of most of the vertical we have seen, the new trend the last 2 years has been, besides automotive, is consumer segment. We're 8 billion people on this planet, just doing pickable pedals or shoes. We talk about millions and millions of parts. Getting a few parts into the interior of a car, we talk about millions and millions of parts. So you guys are in a good spot, but you need to be able to get ready because when the hockey stick will come, going from the industry going to do 1, 2, 5 part of 1,000 different parts, but doing not just 1,000 or 5 parts, but doing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, you need to be able to replicate and repeat that quality because it's a no-go for any print engine technology, and more of them are becoming more indirect printing, meaning that they rely on the post-processing on the same printer, let's say in resin-based technology, on the same printer, on the same lot or batch of resin, the green strength is so-so. 100 part can have, depending if you don't standardize and control the post-processing steps, there are multiple, you will have 100 different material property. If we don't fix that, we will not grow into mass production. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you mentioned consumer there, but I think there's some other important industry verticals such as medical, automotive, all with different requirements, whether it be aesthetics for consumers, the ability to get FDA approval for medical or automotive Class A surface finishes. We operate in all of those areas. But I think that it's, all of those areas have different volumes as well. From our point of view, we're already designing industrial systems and we're ready for industrial additive manufacturing. We do serve lower volume prototyping, service bureaus, contract manufacturers, etc. But some of the announcements we'll be making shortly are about high-end automotive applications, high volume, 24/7 lights out manufacturing, and it's happening now.
Rich?
Yeah, I think that we see this show up in a variety of different consumer-facing industries. So the area around medical and dental is particularly important. We're seeing great traction in the dental space with phenomenal growth there. Biocompatibility certification, which is an important part of the process as it relates to our detergents, is very important. And so we've achieved that certification to open up new markets and solve for customer problems that would otherwise be very difficult for them to address. Automotive is, I believe, is another example of that, high volume production, and we're working with some of the largest automotive companies to achieve it there. Aerospace and defense, we're seeing it across so many different industries. They all have their different rates of growth, different needs, but there's certainly a tremendous amount of commonality that it covers across those different markets.
Yeah, and maybe to add from my side, of course, we also see the applications in the various industries that were just described. But for us, the consumer goods, there's a strong momentum at the moment in all different areas, maybe eyewear, footwear, helmets, or other sporting goods. And I mean, at Dyemansion, a lot of stuff is about color, and color is super necessary in those consumer good applications. So yeah, that's one. If that's the key focus that we are working on right now at Dyemansion to make it happen. And you're also right, especially in the consumer industry, it's about high volumes, and we need to be prepared. You're absolutely right. That's what we are doing. But to be honest, we are already doing it since 7 years. Yeah, so we started 7 years ago, and everyone talked about high volume. So far, there are still not too many applications, but the momentum that we see right now really gives us great confidence that in the next 12 to 24 months, we will see a lot of very, very cool applications. And of course, none of them would be possible without post-processing, that's clear.
Thank you, Felix. Do we have time for one question from the audience?
Any questions from the audience? Yep, there's a gentleman in the back. You get a mic to him, please.
Hello. Hi, Jerome Stanley from Hoganess. Common theme here has been collaboration, it sounds like. I think it was Joseph that said early on that collaboration between post-processing companies and also materials companies. a little bit not counterintuitive, I guess you'd say, compared to a printer manufacturer and post-process. So can you kind of describe what that constellation looks like, how materials can a supplier can collaborate with post-process, and maybe answer both for polymer and metal, please? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So just for full disclosure and context, so we actually have investors that are materials partners. So when we went out to raise capital, we were very strategic in the way that we did it, and we picked investors that would add value. One of those is in the material space, and that gave us the insight into material chemistries. And yes, it could be a nylon, or it could be a TPU or TPE, whatever the material may be. But we're actually now working with them to tweak chemistries in their materials so that when you come to post-process them, they post-process really well. And it's not just about the printing, it's about the post-processing as well. Another example of an investor of ours is Saint-Gobain. You know, they come from they're not a materials provider per se, but they provide consumables into the traditional manufacturing industry. And that's another example of collaboration where they've come from traditional manufacturing into 3D printing and are leveraging our value add to really complete that value add chain. Now, you also asked about metals and other materials. So my background is actually metallurgy, so I'm a metallurgist by trade. So metals is my expertise, and metals are fundamentally more difficult than polymers in terms of post-processing. I think there's a big opportunity there. We're certainly looking at that space eagerly, but at the moment we're really focusing on polymers right now.
Thank you. So in closing, I hope you understand that in addition to designing for additive, the importance of designing for post-processing. Without it, we're not going to go to mass production. So do join me in thanking my amazing panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.